Hey everyone, John Peterson with J. Peterson Photography. And in this video today, I would like to talk a little bit about focus stacking, how I define it, what I think it is, how I do a little bit of focus stacking, and then I'll finish with an example of how I process images doing a focus stack using a couple of different tools. So let's go ahead and get started. What is focus stacking? Really, the cleanest definition of focus stacking is taking multiple shots of the same composition and varying the focal plane or the focal point in each one of the shots, and then blending the in-focus portions of each image together so that your desired object or subject is clearly in focus across its whole area. Seems pretty simple. Take a lot of images, varying the focal point, and then stack them all together in the computer, and you have a beautifully in focus image of what it is you're trying to shoot. So why do we need focus stacking? Why do focus stacking? Well, first reason is maximizing the depth of field. Close-up or macro photography, many times when you're shooting close-ups or macros, your focal plane, the areas that are in focus, are so small that you may not be able to get the entire flower that you're trying to shoot. I'll just pick the flower as an example. You might not be able to get that flower completely in focus. Extreme wide angle landscapes is another reason to use focus stacking. So let's say that there's something in your foreground that you want tack sharp, and there's something in the very background that you also want tack sharp. Well, you might take 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 different images and stack them all together so the entire wide angle landscape is in focus. There's creative reasons to do this. So I'll pick on the flower again, where you want your flower tightly and highly focused, and you want your background out of focus. Another reason is really define the laws of optics. Our lenses and our cameras can only do so much. And, especially if you're shooting close-up or macro, you cannot get focal planes that are inches or feet deep oftentimes. You're really talking in fractions of an inch of places that are in focus. So define the laws of optics with your equipment. You can do that via focus stacking. And then lastly, one of the reasons I do it is avoiding distortions at smaller f-stops. So, depending on the quality of your lens, you may see some distortions when you start cranking things up to f22. So by doing focus stacking, you can keep the aperture in your sweet spot for that lens. So f8, f11, f16, you'll get far less distortions across the image by doing a focus stack. So how do you really do this? Well, there's 2 parts to creating a stacked image, in the field and also in the computer. When you're out in the field, this requires you to plan and shoot a series of images with varying focus areas. So you're going to have to be very overt and very planful to say, hey, I want to stack this. Then at the computer, when you get back home, you're going to need some special software in order to stack all of these images. 2 of the most popular examples are Helicon Focus and then Photoshop. So when you're out in the field, my recommendations is to shoot in manual. Set your aperture, your shutter speed, and your ISO. Once you've set your focal length on your lens, don't adjust it, because the camera needs to stay fixed as you shoot. Because remember, you're going to be putting all of these images together, and you want all of them to line up as much as you possibly can. So trying to focus stack on a windy day, let's say you're shooting a flower and you want to stack it on a windy day, with that flower moving around, it doesn't work all that great. What I recommend and teach people is shoot a marker frame at the beginning and the end of each of your series of shots. It really helps you find those images again once you get back to your computer. Typically, I just put my hand in front of the lens to act as a marker. I'll do one at the beginning of the series and one at the end of the series to know that everything in between are the images that I want to stack. Also, when you're out in the field, use manual focusing techniques. Okay, so get comfortable and use these either via live view or if you have focus peaking on your camera, either way, because as you're taking these images, you're going to need to adjust the point of focus within the shot. The best way to do that is shooting manually. For me, and what I tend to practice is I'll start at the closest point that I want in focus and work my way to the back of the image. Definitely shoot, you have to shoot a series of images. And as you're shooting this series, you want to adjust the focus point for each image. So what I'll typically do is I'll shoot one frame, I'll slightly twist the focus barrel, the focus ring, move the focal point back just a little bit on the subject, and I'll keep doing that. Shoot an image, adjust, shoot, adjust, shoot, adjust, until I feel that I've covered the entire subject that I want in focus. You can go front to back, top to bottom, left to right, either way. However you want to shoot them, you're just going to need to shoot this series that covers your subject. So how many images is enough? Well, that depends. It depends on the situation, the position to the subject, the lens you're using, all sorts of things. So really my advice is take more than you think that you need. You can always get rid of them later. You can never put images in if you didn't take them. So take more than enough and sort them out when you get back home. So at the computer, once you get back home, the first task is to really prepare the images. So using either Lightroom or ACR, I'll find the images that I want to stack, and then I'll make basic adjustments to the images. So what I try to do is really even out exposures, white balance, if that wasn't set. If there's any variations in some of the global settings, I try to get all of the images aligned as possibly as well as I can. This really helps the software do a good stack when all the images are very, very similar. And then once I get done stacking it, that's when I'll do my final creative edits on the image. I don't do any creative type editing on the images before the stack. I wait until afterwards. So let's go ahead and take a look at an example. All right, for this example, let's start in Lightroom because I want to show you the images. The other night I just shot kind of a quick test sequence for this video, so please excuse the dust in my little Formula One car. But this is an example where I shot about 10 or 11 different images with different focal planes along this car, and then we'll do a focus stack on it. So I imported these into Lightroom and I did some white balance adjustments to them. But if you look at this image right here, you can see the front part of the car is in focus. And then you look at the back part of the image, and of course the back part is out of focus. And this was because I was shooting with a 60mm macro and I just could not get a good depth of field so that the front of the car and the back of the car would be in focus at the same time. So then if I move to the next image, I moved my focal plane back a little bit. The next image, the yellow with the camels, is more in focus. I move back and my focal plane is right in here. I move to the next shot, my focal plane is right in here, this slice of the car. I move back and it's this slice of the car. I move back and it's this slice of the car. I keep moving back and I keep taking different slices of the car that's in focus, and I'm kind of back in here now, and now I'm back up here. And you can see how I just moved the focal point from the front of the car to the back of the car. So what I did for this example is I took these images and I've exported them into a JPEG. You can stack JPEGs, TIFFs, you can stack just about anything. But for this example, to keep the processing down to a minimum, I exported them as JPEGs. And what I'd first like to do is show you software called Helicon Focus. And this is from Helicon Soft Company. This is a little bit older version of this software. They have newer versions that are out, but this is one that I've been using for the last 6 to 7 years. 6 to 7 years. because it was the best tool out there. There's some other tools now that will give it a run for its money, but this is still a great tool. So the first thing that we do in Helicon Focus is we'll go up here and we'll add images. And I will select all the images that I want to stack. So you can see how the software has loaded them all over here in this image pane. And really all we have to do now, I'm going to keep the defaults in the software, and then I'll click render. And we'll start to see the computer in the software analyze each layer, each image, and pick out the points and the pixels that are most in focus. It looks a little bit funky right now as it's going through this. And because these are JPEGs, it's going through fairly quickly, which is nice. But at the end, here's the output. I get an image that is very in focus at the front of the car, all the way to the back of the car, and even beyond. So you can see how it rendered an absolutely wonderful in-focus shot from a collection of these that were out of focus. Helicon, it doesn't get much easier really than using Helicon Focus. And you know, from this point, then what you would do, you would just save this image out and then bring it into Lightroom, bring it into Photoshop, and start doing your creative edits on it. So let's go ahead and take a look at this same example image set, but a different way to stack some images. Right, so now I've opened up Photoshop because this is the other tool that I can use to stack images and make a focus blend. This isn't quite as easy of a process as using Helicon Focus, but I'll walk you through the steps to do it. And so if you have Photoshop, you don't need to buy an extra piece of software. So the first thing to do is to go up to File, Scripts, and Load Files into Stack. So I'll browse for the files that I want. So these are the exported images that we looked at in Lightroom. Go ahead and select these, and we'll load them up. And what Photoshop is doing, it's loading each image as an individual layer. And we'll see that here in just a quick second. So you can see all the different layers that I have down the side. Typical layer organization in Photoshop. So now what you need to do to stack these images is select all of the layers. So select the first one, hold down the Shift key, select the last one, and we'll go up to Edit, Auto Blend Layers. New dialog shows up, and we could create a panorama, which obviously wouldn't look good, or we can create stacked images. So go ahead and select this, and also I check the seamless tones and colors box to make sure that the software can try to even things out a little bit. So let's click OK, and the computer starts chunking away, and just like Helicon, the software is picking out the sharpest pixels in each of the layers, and will bring back a composite image that is built from every layer that I selected, and I have a perfectly sharp image from front to back. And that really didn't take very long. And granted, I was using JPEGs and I am using a good Mac, but it really didn't take that long to crunch all those numbers. And you can see from the very front of the image, very front of the nose of this car, all the way to the back, this image is this image is in focus. Sorry about that. So those are just a couple of ways for you to stack different images in either Helicon or Photoshop. When you're out in the field shooting, if you're doing close-ups or macros, great time to try to practice the focus stacking techniques. You could also try it shooting some grand landscapes if you want, or even in the city. So I've done some city shots. I've done some human interest shots where I've stacked images. So it's a great tool to have in your toolbox as a photographer. You practice it. If you have any questions, leave me comments and I'll answer them as best I can. Thank you so much. Have a great day.